How's it going, everyone? I'm Dylan. This is All You Can Board, and the Marvel Champions content, the rush of it continues because we had just had a brand new hero pack announced. This will likely be the one that is coming out with Spider-Ham at the same time, so we have the pair coming out in May, and this will likely be the pair that's coming out in July, is what I would assume for the summer, but it's not completely stated in the article. This is another kind of surprise hero pack, so to speak. We had Spider-Ham, which was a bit of a surprise pack. This is a Spider, I believe is how it's pronounced, and it's the mechanized version of Spider-Man doing the whole, multiverse thing, Spider-Verse thing. This is another unique version of the Spider-Man hero. So there's a lot to talk about in this one because this is a very unique hero. This is a hero that has not one identity card, but two separate identity cards that interact in a very interesting way. So we're going to kind of break it all down. I'm going to explain it because it can be confusing at first glance. I had to read it a couple times to really understand how it works. So if you're kind of confused, hopefully this will shed some light on it. This is also a protection hero pack, which if you know me, protection is my favorite aspect. So I'm really excited about getting new cards there, especially ones that tie in with the Web Warriors. It continues to feel like the Web Warriors are just going to be this really, really strong archetype, especially for protection. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right in and let's take a look at the alter ego side. So the alter ego side is Peni Parker, 4 recovery, hand size of 4 on the alter ego. We'll get back to that in a little bit about why that is and why that's even going to be reduced further on the hero side. Hit points of 14 though, really high hit points. The ability here is a psychogenetic compatibility. I was going to say capability. Set up, put the spider suit into play, inactive side face up. Maintenance, alter ego action, exhaust spider suit, draw 2 cards. You can only do that in alter ego form. Obviously, that's really, really good. But you're probably wondering what this spider suit is, why it has an inactive side. If there are 2 alter ego sides, what's on the other side of Peni Parker? Well, let's jump into the other side of Peni Parker, and you'll start to kind of put the pieces together of what exactly this is. So the other side is a spider, and this is an upgrade with no cost. So as soon as you have flipped it to this side, it is a permanent card, and this card's printed text box cannot be treated as if it were blank. So if there's any cards that can interact in that way, they cannot be effective on this card. So this is an interface card, pilot. Suit up is the ability of forced interrupt. When you flip to this side, flip the spider suit to its active side. So that card will also flip at the same time that Peni Parker flips. Attach this card to the spider suit, removing all counters on this card or cards attached to this card to the spider suit. So when you flip to this side from the alter ego side, this now becomes an upgrade that attaches itself to Spider, which is the hero side essentially of Peni Parker. So just to kind of wrap your head around that and clarify, Peni Parker is the alter ego side. When it gets flipped to the spider side, it becomes an upgrade that attaches to your hero card, which is a separate card and is, what you would normally see on the opposite side of an alter ego card. So for that to be understood, let's jump into the spider suit side. This is the inactive side, the non-hero side. This is a support card. It is also permanent. It also says this card's printed text box cannot be treated as if it were blank. Return to base is the forced interrupt. When you flip to this side, so essentially when you decide to flip to hero side, flip Spider to Peni Parker. There's so much flipping going on. I'm trying to make this as clear as possible, but it is confusing at first glance. So when you flip to this side, flip Spider to Peni Parker, detach Peni Parker from here, moving all counters on her and cards attached to her to this card. So essentially, when you're flipping from hero to alter ego again, and this is going back to the spider suit side instead of being the two combined as one hero, you're detaching Peni Parker from being an upgrade. You're going back to alter ego. They're separating the cards. All counters on her, all cards attached are staying with Peni Parker. So basically the way this functions is you have the suit that is inactive and not being used, and you have Peni Parker as an alter ego. Peni Parker essentially joins into the suit, jumps into the suit, becomes a joint version with the mech. Then you go to the hero side, which is the actual normal hero side that we're familiar with seeing. This is spider suit, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense, hand size of 3. Again, keep that in mind as we get into why that is. Sync ratio resource, exhaust an interface card you control, generate that upgrades resources. So this is why the hand size is so low. The way you're supposed to play Spider is not as, you might be familiar with playing other heroes, where you're going to use cards in your hand to pay for other cards in your hand. Spider is going to be unique in that the main way you're going to pay for the cards that are in your hand are by exhausting interface upgrades that you have in play. You can still, if you would like, play as normal and sort of use other cards to pay for other cards in your hand, but you're going to have a very small hand size to be able to do that. So the idea is the 3 cards you have in your hand, you're trying to play potentially all 3 cards, or 2 of the cards, using these interface upgrades that you have in play, which is a different way to approach Marvel Champions. It'll be interesting to kind of approach it that way and sort of build up, and it kind of takes aspects of Iron Man that way too. Iron Man started with a low hand size, and you had to build them up to be effective. Spider also starts with a low hand size, but rather than building it up to be effective as in getting a higher hand size, you're just building up the resources you have available to you, and once you do, suddenly you're going to be super powerful and be able to accomplish a whole bunch. And there might be other ways to increase your hand size using other basic cards, using the symbiote suit that we recently got to potentially even have more things that you're able to accomplish on your turn. So I understand at first glance this is a more complicated and complex hero. This is likely not going to be a hero that someone who's brand new to Marvel Champions is going to jump into, and this is going to be their first hero pack. It is a different way to play Marvel Champions, a different way to approach it. You do have these 2 separate identity cards, so that when you flip from hero, alter ego to hero, you're flipping to another card entirely, and your card is essentially joining with that card because you've boarded your mech, essentially, is the way to look at it. So really interesting and unique all around, not only in the hand size and the way the cards are played, but also in the way that the hero and alter ego interact. Very, very cool, and obviously very high hit points with 14. So let's jump into some of the cards now, and we can kind of start to get a feel of how this character is going to play even beyond these unique aspects. And we're going to look at the interface cards first, because again, that's very important. You're going to be exhausting interface cards for either their ability or to use them as resources to generate that upgrades resources. So let's jump into the Host Spider, which is a 3-cost upgrade. Hero action, exhaust Host Spider to ready Spider Suit. Awesome card right there alone, if a little bit expensive. But again, what makes it even better is that it has a wild resource in what it can generate, and you can exhaust this to ignore the ability completely and instead use the sync ratio ability to generate that wild resource, which means that wild resource is going to allow you to be able to play a bunch of stuff in your hands, especially if it has specific requirements and what resource you're generating, and it's already just a good card on its own. But again, a lot of that's going to be reliant on how soon you're drawing this, when you're getting it into play, and how quickly you're able to build up that engine, build up that kit to make Spider Suit as effective as possible. But either way, Host Spider is a really good card, and the fact that it's an interface card makes it a lot better. Moving on to Psychic Link. This is a 2-cost upgrade. Hero Interrupt. When Spider Suit makes a basic thwart, exhaust Psychic Link to get +2 thwart to that thwart. So remember, you have basic 2 thwart already, which is a really solid stat line. You're essentially, when you have this in play, whenever you'd want, you can basic thwart for 4. And again, the only caveat there is that this is sometimes going to be used as an interface card to generate a resource instead, and it does generate a mind resource. But even as just a basic ability to be able to do 4 thwart whenever you want, that's really, really strong. And one of the things we see where, yes, you start with the lower hand size, and yes, you start a little bit weaker than some heroes will in that regard, but once you start to get these cards out, once you build out that kit, much like Iron Man, if you're a fan of the Iron Man hero that way, having to sort of build it up, once you've been built up and you get all these interface cards, you're going to have the potential to do, so much thwart, attack, and defense, and generate whatever resources you need to play these cards in your hand. So it's a really, really interesting and effective hero that way. And you're going to be going through your deck a lot slower than you normally would with other heroes because of the small hand size, which means, yes, you might not see duplicates or might see cards come up as often as you might see with other heroes, but you're also not going to have to, go through your deck and have the penalties of that kind of, affect you as well. So the next cards we're going to look at are very similar to Psychic Link. We have Speed Metal Alloy, which is a 1-cost upgrade, but basically does the same thing, but for defense. So when Spider Suit defends against an attack, you can exhaust this to get +2 to your defense, which gives you 4 defense and makes you a really effective protection hero to be able to do that and be able to get this card out really, really cheap and still use this to use resources instead with I keep forgetting the name of the ability, but it's sync ratio, to be able to generate the fist resource, the strength resource that is on this card. And then lastly, we have the Web Fluid Compressor, which is the attack version of this, the offensive version. 2-cost upgrade. When Spider Suit makes a basic attack, exhaust Web Fluid Compressor, it gets +2 for that attack, and this generates an energy resource. So again, if you're able to get all these cards into play, all these interface cards into play, you have so much potential to be able to generate tons of different resources, to be able to do 4 thwart, 4 attack, 4 defense whenever you would like. It just makes the spider suit suddenly such a strong hero side, along with having 14 health. It almost doesn't matter that you only have a hand size of 3, because those are the cards you would likely be playing. In a normal hand, you might have those 3 cards that you would want to play, but you'd be using the other cards that are in your hand to play them. So you end up kind of in the same boat. The only difference here being that you're drawing less cards. Sometimes you might have a less effective hand where you don't necessarily want to play everything in your hand, or you have cards that potentially, if your protection, are wanting to engage on the villain's phase and you have less to do on your actual player turn than just use these cards to, attack or thwart, whatever the case may be, and hold those other cards in your hand back for the villain phase. So it really is going to make you shift in how you kind of view Marvel Champions, how you view the hero you're playing, and you're going to have to kind of adjust and play very differently than maybe you're used to playing, which is always great for the game to kind of change things up and shake up the formula. We're going to get into a support card now that is, going away from the interface cards. This is Aunt May and Uncle Ben on a single card. So this is a 1-cost support. Action, exhaust Aunt May and Uncle Ben and discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Top 3 cards instead, if you are in alter ego form, add each spider card discarded this way to your hand. Now, at first glance, you might think, you're not even getting guaranteed any card draw here, and if you don't get those cards you're trying to hit, you've just discarded cards for nothing. But you do have to recall that you are going to be going through your deck a lot slower than other heroes because you have such a low hand size. Just if you're spending a lot of time in hero form, for instance, you only have 3-card hand. That's going to go a lot slower through your deck, and so this card is going to sort of be potentially the one that, if it doesn't even hit the spider cards that you want to be able to add to your hand, you're at least discarding cards that aren't those cards to be able to draw into them on your low hand size and potentially be able to play them next time. So in any other hero, this might seem like a pretty poor support, or at least not as good as other support cards we've seen in the game. In this deck specifically, I think it's going to be a little bit more useful, and it's gonna accelerate how quickly you get into the key spider cards you want to get into, especially if they're your kit cards. And the odd time that you potentially draw, discard 2 cards and they're both spider cards, you've essentially just drawn 2 cards, which is really, really good. So it is a really interesting support card in that it is strong specifically in spider and might not have been as strong in most other heroes. Then we have a really important card, which is called All Systems Go. This is a 1-cost event. Hero action, you can choose one of 2 things. First, ready each interface upgrade you control, which would be amazing if you have your entire kit out, or search your deck and discard pile for an interface upgrade and add it to your hand. Both of these are really good. If you've already built up your kit, this now becomes a way to refresh everything and get double uses out of things. One as a resource, one as their actual ability potentially. And 2, if you haven't built your kit up, this is a way to just get those kit cards. Whether you've accidentally discarded them, whether they haven't come up in your deck yet, this is going to accelerate your kit. So the fact that this card doesn't all of a sudden become a dud in either situation, it's either helping you when the kit's built or helping you build that kit up, is really, really important. I'm curious to see if, again, I could probably look at the numbers of the cards. This is 4 to 17 to see if we're getting multiple copies of this or not. Having 2 copies could be really good, for instance, because it's just going to give you 2 extra chances to build that kit up or to refresh it. I really like what this card's doing because you're always going to balance. Do I want to use these strong interface cards for their ability, or do I want to use them as resource generators? Now you can do both, or you can resource generate twice if you have a bunch of really expensive cards in your hand and potentially, be able to forward all 3 cards in your hand if they happen to all be expensive. So really, really important card that I think is going to be used a lot in this deck. Then we have a rapid deployment, a 2-cost event, hero action, thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme, but if you paid for this card using a resource generated by the sync ratio ability, remove another 3 threat from a scheme. So that ends up being 6 threat removed for 2, and you're likely going to very frequently be using your sync ratio ability to pay for this card. Like, I would say generally you're almost never going to not do that unless you just really need to remove 3 threat and you're not set up to do that. So to be able to remove 6 threat for 2 is really, really good. This is going to make a protection, potentially, a hero that comes as a protection hero and it gravitates maybe a little bit more strongly to that. Also a very solid threat remover, which is really important when you're playing solo protection specifically, which makes me really excited because it makes it so that Spider could be a really solid solo hero all around. Next up, we have a web trap, which is kind of similar, 2-cost event, hero action attack, deal 5 damage to an enemy, but if you pay for this card using your sync ratio ability, stun that enemy as well. Really, really solid. Two costs, do 5 damage no matter what. Already really, really solid, but then also potentially be able to reliably stun an enemy. Really good card. I think all around Spider is proving to be a really solid solo hero. So if you're someone who is, playing mostly solo with Marvel Champions and that's what gets you excited, is these heroes that reliably are going to be very good in that regard, I think Spider is starting to show that this is going to be a really, really solid hero. And we also have Ejection Protocol. So this is a 0 cost support, hero action, discard Ejection Protocol, exhaust each interface upgrade you control, but set your hit points exactly to 6, give your identity a tough status card, and flipped alter ego. This is a really interesting card because it's not like it heals you up to full, but it does put your hit points at a pretty reliably, solid number while also giving you a tough status card and putting you into alter ego. So you could do a whole bunch in your hero form and then discard Ejection Protocol, flip over and having still accomplish everything you wanted to on your turn and be really set up for the next turn you go to alter ego, in that you could heal this up to 10 with her 4 recovery and have a tough status card as you enter hero form. Really solid card, and I think one that's you're gonna like to have in play and then use at the most opportune time to accomplish what you want to, but then still feel really safe. Awesome card. Those are all the hero-specific cards. We're now going to jump into the protection cards, which there's some really, really exciting ones. All right, so we're jumping into the protection cards, and we're starting off with the allies, which we get 2 exciting ones, and the first one may be the most exciting for some people because there's been a lot of clamoring for a Daredevil hero pack. Maybe this will tie everyone over just a little bit because we're getting a new Daredevil Ally, and this is a protection version. It is a 2-cost ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack, 2 consequential damage on the thwart, 3 health, which is really good for 2 costs. Response: after Daredevil defends against an attack, move 1 damage from him to the attacking enemy. This is really interesting because there are some villains specifically that you could be taking on, some decks you could build where Daredevil could have tons of longevity by just being able to take very small hits from small minions, whether it be exactly 1 damage potentially, and then move that damage as long as Daredevil survives to the attacking enemy, potentially killing that enemy, wearing it down, and still surviving and play for a long time. If you can get Daredevil into play against, either Ultron and that kind of villain where there is always going to be, or very often going to be, small minions in play that are dealing potentially only 1 damage, suddenly Daredevil can just be the ally in play that just soaks up those hits, redirects them back, and never really dies or takes a long time to die before he takes the huge hit. I really like this as, a sort of a tech ally that you can put into very specific situations against specific allies. It's not going to be, a mainstay in necessarily every deck, but as a 2-cost, also chump blocker that can potentially last longer than he should, maybe it ends up in a lot more decks. It's a very interesting ally. I really like it, and it's cool that it's obviously Daredevil. Then we have Spider-Man Noir. This is a 3-cost ally, 3 health, X thwart and X attack, and it is a web warrior. Now the X is equal to the number of face-down cards attached to Spider-Man Noir. Now obviously that's going to start off as 0, which means that at the very beginning, this is a 0 thwart, 0 attack ally. So you kind of have to play the long game with this ally. But the response is, after you resolve a treachery, if you control another web warrior card, which you likely will if you're playing this, attach that treachery face down here to a maximum of 3, which means that once you powered up Spider-Man Noir, you suddenly have a 3 thwart, 3 attack ally with only a consequential damage, a single one on each one. Now, this has a potential to be pretty good, but what I worry about here is that you're paying 3 costs for something that's going to start relatively weak, and that even when you build it up to that point, some of what you're likely going to want to do with Spider-Man Noir is block, or normally that's what you want to do with allies, and suddenly you don't want to do that here. You want to build Spider-Man Noir up, and you almost don't want to do thwarts and attacks until that card is built up, because you don't want to just have wasted consequential damage on, say, a single attack or a single thwart. So a lot of this is going to revolve around how quickly you can build Spider-Man Noir up to get to that 3/3, and then at that point, get a whole bunch of mileage that you otherwise potentially wouldn't get with other allies. So there's a potential there. It is a web warrior. There's a lot of, syncing up with other web warriors that you can do that'll make this card even more powerful than it seems at first glance, but it's not, as clear-cut powerful at first glance as some of the other web warrior cards we've seen. I think this is going to take a little bit of deck finesse and also the right situation to be powerful. Then we have Thwip Thwip, which is an awesome title. 2-cost event, hero action, deal 1 damage to a web warrior card you control. Plays a total of 2 stun status cards on up to 2 enemies. This seems really ridiculously good. Again, in a web warrior, it is like web warrior specific, but in that deck, if you're playing protection, why not take this card? You take a single damage to deal out 2 stun counters, which could be the difference maker in a lot of situations that you find yourself, falling behind in the board state or against certain villains. Excellent card. Again, it might not make it into every single protection web warrior deck, but I think it's going to make it into a lot of them just from being such a fail-safe card. I'm loving what I'm seeing with these web warrior cards in general, and the fact that this one is such a strong protection one has me super, super excited. It's also a superpower card for anyone who wants to do any sort of potential superpower comboing with. I think we had a card, I can't remember the name of it, where you can reduce the cost of superpower cards. Potentially there's some comboing you can do there. Next up, we have Spider-Tingle, which is a 1-cost upgrade, another superpower card. Interrupt: when you would reveal an encounter card, deal 1 damage to a web warrior character you control. If that card is a treachery, cancel its when revealed effects and discard Spider-Tingle. So this is basically another kind of fail-safe card. You have it in play, it's an upgrade, and you only have to take a single damage to cancel out a treachery card, which there are some pretty nasty treachery cards out there. There could be ones that completely leave you either losing the game or at way far behind from them coming out. This now saves you and you can just cancel them out. We've seen cards similar to this. This is a web warrior specific version of it, and it could be something that you could build a protection deck where you always feel safe with cards like Thwip Thwip and Spider-Tingle and other ones we've seen, to just build a deck where you never really are taking the full brunt of a lot of the cards you're being dealt. Then we have a Forcefield Generator, a different kind of protection card here. This is a 3-cost upgrade. It's a tech card, 6 energy uses on it, max 1 per player for this card. Force to interrupt: when you would take any amount of damage or remove that many energy counters from here. For each counter you removed, prevent 1 damage. So essentially, you can prevent up to 6 damage with this in place. So if you look at it as 3 costs, prevent 6 damage, it's good, and it's I don't know if it's necessarily going to be good enough to make it into a lot of different protection guard decks. I think you'd have to have a little bit of tech synergy to potentially, put it over that next level. Preventing 6 damage, don't get me wrong, is still really, really good. We just have other ways to prevent damage that are cheaper, that may not be as, direct, just pure prevent this damage. They might be a little more situational, but perhaps that's what your deck, maybe the deck building allows you to have those more situational cards and pay less for them. So remains to be seen how good this card is. At first glance, I think it's probably good, but not great. But again, I'll have to try it in some of these decks and see, does it earn a spot in some of these protection decks that we've seen come up lately. And the last protection card that we're going to look at is Repurpose. This is a 0-cost event. Hero action: discard a tech upgrade you control, so like the one we just looked at. Ready your hero and choose thwart, attack, or defense. Until the end of the round, your hero gets plus X of the chosen power, where X is that upgrade's printed cost. So this, for instance, is one of the cards that could combo very well with Forcefield Generator, because that has a higher cost. You're getting +3 to your thwart, attack, or defense for 0 cost on this event. All you have to do is discard it. So you could use Forcefield Generator, get it down to low counters, and then use this to discard it and get a whole big, burst of your attack, thwart, or defense, which is obviously really, really good. So I think this is going to be an interesting card that, again, is situational and is very specific to the deck you're building. But if you're building a deck that has a bunch of tech cards, this can be a way to get that extra mileage, extra use out of them, which is kind of cool. All right, we're getting into the basic cards. We have a really exciting basic ally here. Another version of Spider-Man as an ally. We've had so many of these. This is also Web Warrior. This is the Otto Octavius version of Spider-Man. I believe he's from the Superior Spider-Man comic line or something like that. 2-cost ally, 2 health, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 consequential damage on the attack. Play only if you control a Web Warrior card. After you play Spider-Man from your hand, ready an upgrade you control. If that upgrade has the tech trait, draw 1 card. So this is one of the reasons we're seeing some of these tech cards come into play. Obviously, it ties into the Spider Hero pack as a whole, but we're seeing some synergy here as well, where this Spider-Man specifically works with those tech cards that we're now getting, and you can kind of build around that. So ready and upgrade your control, and if that upgrade has a tech trait, drawing a card, basically, if you hit the right card, you're ready an upgrade and drawing a card just for having played Spider-Man from your hand, and you're getting this chump blocker as well that is only costing you 2. So overall, that entire package is really good. It's just very specific to Web Warrior tech decks, which it's hard for me to rate that right now because that's not a current archetype that's people are playing as very strong. If it does become a strong archetype and one that has enough cards to support it, this is suddenly a staple and will likely see a lot of play. And be a very strong card in that archetype. So I can't really rate it much more beyond that, other than to say that there's really high potential, and I hope it hits it. Lastly, this is a really, really interesting card. So this is Unshakeable. It is a superpower. It does have Hulk on the art, and I think there's a reason for that. 1 cost upgrade. Play only if your identity has at least 14 printed hit points, which obviously narrows the hero pool down for who can play this. But it says your identity gains steady. Steady characters, of course, require 2 status cards at the same time to be stunned or confused. So this is one of those cards that is not going to make it into every deck. It's not going to become this staple basic card. But if you are playing against a villain, where specifically what you're running into, the problems you're running into is that you're being stunned or confused a lot, and you're having trouble dealing with that, you can basically make it so that it's very, very hard to get stunned for a single cost. Now that's pretty specific, and it's not gonna prevent you overall. It's not stalwart. Like, you're not getting completely prevented. Like, it's still possible for you to get stunned and confused, but it's slowing it down. So how often this card's gonna be used, hard to say, but it is a really cool card that we're now seeing that your hit points are dictating which cards can be played. And maybe we'll see more of these type of cards come into play that are meant to sort of go back and power up some other previous heroes that have high hit points. I think that's pretty exciting. So it's a neat card, whether or not it sees a lot of play. I just think it's kind of cool that it's in the game. All right, so those are all the cards that we had introduced in this pack, aside from the new encounter set that is coming to this pack. So the trends continue. We're getting encounter sets in the hero packs rather than, I believe it's in place of the player cards. And this is an interesting one because it's a Sinister Six encounter set. We just got the Sinister Six encounter set in Sinister Motives, but this is a new version of the Sinister Six, which I'm assuming is from the universe that Spider is in. So it is her Sinister Six. Some characters are the same that we've seen. Some of them are brand new. So the first one we got is Sandman, new version of Sandman, 1 scheme, 1 attack, 7 health, huge amount of health. After Sandman takes any amount of damage from an attack, discard the top 7 cards of the encounter deck. That's pretty wild. So again, you're going to be going through the encounter deck way quicker when you're discarding 7 cards at the top, but you're also going to potentially be getting rid of some of these cards that you might not want to hit. So mostly a negative, but still interesting that you could lose out on having to deal with 7 cards off the top. But if you're doing really small hits of Sandman, if you're just doing like 1 or 2 damage on each hit, suddenly you could go through the encounter deck just from Sandman being in play, which kind of fits into the sand mechanic of the sand, going down the deck. It's a really interesting card, and one that I don't think we've seen before. And I should have mentioned, I think I said that this is like Spider's Sinister Six. It's actually Iron Spider's Sinister Six, so not specifically Spider-Man or Spider's Sinister Six. The boost here is discard the top 7 cards of the encounter deck. You're not getting away from that effect. Next one we have Bombshell, which I'm not familiar with this character, but this is a 2 scheme, 3 attack, 4 health minion. A star on the attack is divide damage from Bombshell's attack among each character the attacked player controls as evenly as possible. So it's you're not just being able to defend with a single card and have the damage in there. It is going to start getting split among your other characters. And the boost here is deal 1 indirect damage to each player, exhaust each character damage this way. The boost is honestly really, really bad as well. So this is a pretty nasty card all around because whether it's a boost or the minion, it's affecting you really negatively. And the 4 health luckily is easier to deal with, but the attack that's getting dealt your way is a lot higher than we've seen on other minions. We also have a new version of Hobgoblin. This is 2 scheme, 2 attack, 5 health. Forced interrupt, when Hobgoblin would attack you, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck equal to Hobgoblin's attack instead. Take 1 indirect damage for each boost icon discarded this way. So the attack value here almost doesn't matter. What's actually happening is that's how many cards are getting discarded off the top, and the damage you're taking is actually the boost icon. So again, depending on the villain you're playing and depending on the situation, you could end up taking 6 damage from a single attack and not have been expected, and that unpredictability makes it harder to know how you should deal with the upcoming attack. Whereas normally with minions you can say, oh, it doesn't have villainous, I'll just take this 2 damage, I can deal with it. Now you don't even really quite know what it is that you're going to be dealing with. So a pretty nasty minion here with the potential to be devastating. We then have Iron Spider, so this is 2 scheme, 2 attack, 6 health. Now I'm realizing I'm completely not in tune and in the loop with a lot of Spider-Man, these other, you know, Spider Universe, Spider-Verse heroes. I'm a very original Spider-Man kind of guy, so I thought Iron Spider was the hero version of Spider-Man. This is now Iron Spider is clearly in this universe a minion, a villain. So I don't know if this is Spider's Sinister Six. He's attacking Miles Morales in the artwork. I don't know if this is the Miles Morales universe's Sinister Six or another version of them. Maybe someone can clarify me in the comments, you know, where this Sinister Six version comes from and how it differs from the Sinister Motives one. I'd be curious. But this is 2 scheme, 2 attack, 6 health. It's an elite minion, guard, patrol, retaliate 1, toughness, and attacks gain overkill. So just a whole bunch of keywords. This is the keyword minion with tons of health. It's going to be hard to deal with, and it needs to be dealt with because it has guard and patrol. So really, really nasty minion as well. And the last thing we're going to look at is the side scheme, which is Grand Larceny. This is a 4 threat side scheme that says threat cannot be removed from the scheme while a criminal minion is in play. And all the minions we just looked at are criminals. So if you have any of them in play, you're going to have to deal with them before you can deal with Grand Larceny to get rid of this this icon here, which doesn't allow you to remove threat from the main scheme. So that is the amount of cards we've gotten revealed from the encounter set. There's more that we haven't seen yet that are in there as well, obviously. But overall, what an interesting, unique pack. I mean, there's so many things this pack is doing differently that it almost feels like who this pack is meant for is the longtime Marvel Champions veterans, or the people that have played a lot of Marvel Champions and are looking for something new. Because to start with this pack, it's going to give you a different impression of what Marvel Champions of the game and how it's played is compared to what it actually is. This is the only hero that is really in the game where you're not gonna, you know, play resources from your hand. You're going to play them from the board. Like, that's a really different way to approach the game. And I like that we're going to get heroes that kind of say, okay, you know, you've played Marvel Champions this way, you're used to it, now try to experience it this way. Here's this new way to experience it. So really exciting hero pack. I honestly cannot wait to play this, especially because it's protection based, especially because it seems like a really strong solo hero. Just lots to be excited about. So let me know in the comments what you think of Spider. It's another, you know, slightly weird hero pack maybe we weren't expecting to get compared to some of the ones that are on people's list. Do you like that? Are you still, you know, holding a hope for the X-Men and Daredevil? Let me know in the comments. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching another Marvel Champions video. If you want to subscribe to our channel, that would be most appreciated. If you want to join our Discord or support us on Patreon or buy some merch, you can find those links in the description below. Otherwise, we will see you in the next one.